All right, joining me now is Senior Fellow at Defense Priorities and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Colonel, always great to see you. Three hostages released over the weekend, but not all of the hostages. And now we hear Prime Minister Netanyahu vowing to open the gates of hell. What do you think happens next?
Well, there's obviously a lot of pressure on Hamas to give all of the rest of the hostages back. There was originally agreed a timeline where the hostages would be released over time. And one of the reasons why Hamas negotiated this particular requirement is because they realized that once all the hostages are gone, they run out of leverage. They have no more leverage to do anything. And you heard Secretary of State Rubio in that previous clip saying that they would not be allowed to stay in any form and would either have to be destroyed or given up. So from their perspective, they want to try and keep as much leverage as they can, because otherwise that the war is going to open back up and they will have nothing to do against Israel but the resumption of the war. And that's a pretty bleak situation there, especially for the people of Palestine, who are still suffering tremendously.
Well, okay, so we're seeing the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State meeting, saying in this joint statement the U.S. and Israel have this, quote, common strategy to, quote, ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. What do you think that really means, Colonel? And do you think there is truly a way to ensure that Gaza is never again a threat?
Well, you got to understand that what Netanyahu said earlier today was that he believes that the only way to assure that is to get rid of all the Palestinians and to take them completely out of the land. And he said that's why I fully support President Trump's desire to relocate all of the Palestinian people out of there, because short of that, you're not going to get there. And as I pointed out to you when this whole thing started, that if you just go on a path to try and kill all of the Hamas people and you kill tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians in the process, all you're going to be doing is building up more insecurity for you in the future, because those people will want revenge, etc. Now then, has been playing out so far. So if Netanyahu is not successful at getting all of these Palestinians removed and basically ethnic cleansing, then they're going to be left with, then what do you do? Because the Palestinian people are still in miserable conditions right now. And believe me, the last thing that they are interested in is just having peaceful coexistence inside of a new prison going forward. So there has to be either some kind of political settlement to where the Palestinian people have some kind of hope for freedom, or I'm afraid we're going to stay in this bleak cycle.
You know, and Colonel, I want to talk about that. Do you think that there isn't a focus on the resentment, on the retaliation that could happen, among some of these people who right now may not have any direct connection to Hamas?
No, there's no, in the West there's not anyway. Obviously in that part of the world there's a lot of focus on that, but unfortunately you hear like Lindsey Graham's comment a second ago. They literally aren't even giving it any thought. They're just talking about expanding the war possibly into Iran, thinking that going and using force up there will somehow bring peace to the region and peace to Israel. And I'm afraid it's just going to stir the hornet's nest up further, because this issue has been going on since the 1940s, because the Palestinian people have not gotten what they view as any kind of close to being a peaceful piece of land where they can live in the territory where they have historical roots, for centuries before all this stuff started. And so far, no one's even considering that. And if anybody in the West thinks that they can just ignore that because they're in a powerless position right now, they're going to be surprised, because the only thing they have is resistance if they're not given a peaceful path. And that's just the human nature that people all over the world have if they don't get peace.
Absolutely. All right. So Secretary Rubio just yesterday said the U.S. is working to try to get the hostages home. I'd like to listen to part of what he said.
We share a common goal. We want to see every hostage released. Frankly, I think, and the president has said this, we want to see them out as soon as we possibly can. And certainly, the world has watched these images of people, and it's just heartbreaking to remember that some of them have been now almost 2 years there. It's a horrifying situation.
All right, so under this new administration, Lieutenant Colonel, what do you think is happening behind the scenes right now?
Well, there's just lots of back and forth about what's going to happen next. I mean, the issue has always been, at least for the United States, about getting the hostages back, although the previous administration didn't seem to prioritize that very much. And the Netanyahu government definitely didn't, because they could have had a deal a long time ago if that was really a priority. So I truly think that behind the scenes right now, the priority for the Netanyahu government and many of his administration is to try and go down Trump's path to get rid of all the Palestinians, because they think that's how it's going to end. And I don't think there's much talk about anything else right now.
And I know we, still haven't even officially, got to the end of this war. We have to get to the next phase. But once that happens, assuming it does, what do you think the rebuilding process will look like, especially considering what we have heard now from President Trump and his idea of what he would like to see for the future of that piece of land?
Well, see, we have contradictory things going on right now, because we're in the latter part of phase one of a supposed to be a three-phased operations to end the Hamas-Israeli war that's supposed to result in freedom and, in rebuilding for the Palestinian people in Palestine. The Arab League has drafted a bunch of possibilities of how that can be done without displacing the Palestinian people. But then you have that contradicted by the Israeli side wanting to say, well, we don't actually want that future. We want one where there aren't any Palestinians here. And so you have these two working at cross purposes right now. And until everybody gets on board with what the end state is supposed to look like, and they have even a broad kind of agreement toward it, you see all you're going to have is conflict, because it can't be any other way.
Always love talking to you. I love your perspective. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you as always.
Always my pleasure.